Welcome to the closing plenary of ACEF 2021. I'm Steve Peters. I'll be your moderator during this session. I'm from the Energy Group at ADB. It's been a very busy week, so let's go and see some of the highlights. As we come to the closing of ACEF 2021, we have some closing messages. The first is from Dr. Steve Olive, the Mission Director, Regional Development Mission to Asia for the United States Agency for International Development.
Thank you very much, Steve, and good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to be here on behalf of the United States government and especially the United States Agency for International Development for another successful Asia Clean Energy Forum. This year, like last year, our partners at the Asian Development Bank have pulled off a remarkable feat. They have given thousands of colleagues from all corners of the globe an opportunity to come together to pursue sustainable solutions that meets Asia's growing energy needs. They have done so amidst the challenges of an ongoing global pandemic. In fact, all of us are here today have overcome challenges in the past year to make significant progress towards a cleaner energy future. We know this because each year ASEF presents us with the opportunity to take stock of what we have achieved to date. The proceedings this week have highlighted what efforts are needed to fast track the clean energy transition and a green recovery. The good news is that according to the speakers at the opening plenary, it is possible for this region to achieve carbon neutrality. But we need to work together and move forward on technological innovations and policy commitments. In addition, we need to decarbonize 5 times faster over the next 10 years than we have over the last 20 years to avoid the worst effects of climate change. The events this week demonstrated the range of initiatives and private and public sector partnerships that are working to achieve these goals. We have learned about best-in-class tools, methods of technical assistance, and the mobilization of financial resources. We also heard about new and innovative low-carbon technologies, such as e-mobility and energy storage. Furthermore, we explored how utilities are embarking on digitalization and even using blockchain to support electricity trading, green energy certificates, and smart meter operations. Many sessions have talked about the critical role that gender, especially women, plays in the energy sector as both energy experts, prosumers, and consumers. Moreover, while Asia is on the road to achieving near universal access to electric power, we are reminded again of the opportunity to pursue a more just and equitable clean energy transition as the region recovers from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Recently, USAID measured the quantitative impacts of our clean energy and climate change mitigation activities throughout Southeast Asia. The video that we are about to present demonstrates our results. It also represents the fruits of USAID's collaboration with the United States and Southeast Asian government agencies, donor partners, multilateral institutions, and private sector stakeholders. It offers a window into our plans to increase access to renewable energy sources, strengthen energy security, and mitigate the impacts of global climate change in Southeast Asia. As you will see, USAID's collaborations have contributed cutting-edge tools to inform energy project planning and investment, have led to significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and supported the extensive deployment of the latest clean energy technologies in the region. While we are proud of the work that we and our partners have accomplished to secure Southeast Asia's energy future, we're even more excited about the bold climate agenda put forward by the United States Biden-Harris administration. In South and Southeast Asia alone, USAID has over $200 million worth of activities planned to enhance energy security, increase renewable energy integration, improve gender and social inclusion, and incentivize cross-sectoral innovations among other areas. We are confident by building on these and other long-standing energy partnerships in the region, and by forging new ones, we will continue to make a positive and collective contribution to Asia's future. To advance the agenda, we look forward to working with partners from around the region to collectively build Asia's low-carbon future. So again, on behalf of the US government and USAID, I want to thank you all for your engagement and participation. And now I ask that you sit back and enjoy the video.
Southeast Asia is booming, but the region is increasingly reliant on coal-fired generation and imports of fossil fuels, intensifying the effects of climate change. The United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, has been helping to expand the supply of sustainable energy in Southeast Asia. Over the past 5 years, USAID has mobilized nearly $9 billion in investment towards clean energy and climate adaptation in Southeast Asia, while cutting greenhouse gas emissions by nearly 8 million tons. In Indonesia, we helped 3 million people gain access to clean energy sources. And in Vietnam, USAID helped to triple the number of rooftop solar panels in just 1 year. We're providing state-of-the-art technologies to increase the use of solar power across the region and financial tools to evaluate investments. And we're not done. Over the next 5 years, USAID will drive investment towards energy security in the Philippines. We will help Papua New Guinea connect 70% of its population to electricity. And we're laying foundations for electric vehicles in Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam. Alongside the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, USAID is supporting a regional power grid that integrates renewable energy, stabilizes electricity supplies, and helps to reduce emissions that contribute to climate change. By helping to secure Southeast Asia's energy future and reduce the impacts of climate change, USAID not only contributes to regional prosperity, but also to the well-being of the Earth and all of its inhabitants.
Thank you, Dr. Olive, and thank you, USAID. Next, Mrs. Damilola Ogunbiyi, the CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy, will share a recorded message.
Hello, distinguished delegates and participants. I wish I could be there delivering these remarks in person and participate in what I understand is yet another impressive action-oriented program being delivered by the Asian Development Bank and partners. I definitely hope to be there in person next year. I'd like to start with some key figures. Today, we still have 759 million people without access to electricity and 2.6 billion people who do not have access to clean cooking. These numbers are expected to get worse because of COVID-19. According to the just released SDG 7 tracking report and the latest data, which is from 2019, for Asia, the electricity gap was 152 million people, and the clean cooking gap was 1.5 billion people. Significant progress has been made in Asia that gives hope, but the report findings should serve as a wake-up call to the global community. So many developmental goals hinge on access to clean and affordable energy, from creating new economic opportunities to securing gender equality to addressing climate change, for education, health, and security. Access to energy is ever so important in our fight to save lives for COVID-19 pandemic. Countries without energy access and those that are not accelerating their energy transition to a low carbon economy are likely to fall further behind from the pandemic, which is why 2021 must be the year of ambitious action on energy access and energy transition. In the spirit of the theme of the session on collective action, the UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy this September is an opportunity for us all to demonstrate our commitment and ambition towards achieving Sustainable Development Goal 7. A key outcome of the dialogue will be energy compacts that are public and trackable voluntary commitments on energy access and energy transitions. The decade of action requires a step change in urgency if we are to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 7 by 2030 and get on track for the Paris Agreement. The high-level dialogue and the energy compacts offer unprecedented opportunities for governments, companies, financial institutions, and development agencies and other stakeholders to showcase leadership on the energy pathway that truly leaves no one behind. I urge you all to work with your partners in countries to support the development of their energy compacts so that they can make their intent clear and seek the support they need to drive ambition towards all our common goals. 2030 is only 9 years away, and we're counting on you to join us in this process and help drive forward with a sense of urgency and purpose. The high-level dialogue is not the end, but instead it's the beginning of our endeavors. I am pleased to take the opportunity to invite you to the Ministerial Thematic Forum taking place next week, a critical milestone on the way to the high-level dialogue in September, and an opportunity to discuss and learn from each other the innovation and scale and financing needed to end energy poverty and accelerate energy transition. I look forward to working with you all, and I want to thank our valued partner, the Asian Development Bank, a leader promoting energy access and an inclusive energy transition in the region. Thank you for inviting me, and I really look forward to working with you all on the high-level dialogue on energy. Thank you.
Now is the time to be bold and ambitious.
At the high-level dialogue on energy in September, we can change course.
It's time to give access to electricity and all the opportunities that it brings to the nearly 800 million people who still live without it, and to start a green energy transition for everyone.
It's time for bold new partnerships to provide countries with the resources they need to enable a fair and just energy transition that leaves no one behind.
It's time for nations to fulfill their commitments under the Paris Agreement and make the transition we urgently need.
Let's all do our part by making an energy compact with voluntary commitments
to advance clean, affordable energy for all by 2030.
As we put the world on a path to reach net zero emissions by the middle of the century.
I call upon all mayors around the world to join us in putting energy compacts
to switch their cities over to clean energy.
Call on businesses to join us in making energy compact plans in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement.
To advance the productive use of renewable energy for all by 2030.
I call on organizations around the world to join us in making energy compact commitments.
To make clean electricity and cooking fuels affordable for all.
So I urge everyone involved to make ambitious energy compacts, to help bring the benefits of clean power to communities around the world whilst building a clean, green, resilient future for our planet.
I call on young people around the world to join us in making clean energy commitments.
And to hold our governments and others accountable for the future that they leave to us.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time.
Thank you, Mrs. Damilola Ogunbiyi. Next, Dr. John Merton, the UK COP25 envoy, will share a recorded message.
Good morning, and thank you to the Asian Development Bank for organising this year's Asia Clean Energy Forum. I'd also like to thank USAID and the Korea Energy Agency for co-organising this event. To avoid the current climate crisis, we need to act now. The science is clear. And acting now includes making ambitious long-term strategies to set out how we will put our economies on a path to net zero by 2050. Putting the world on a path to net zero is one of our COP26 goals, and net zero commitments now cover over 70% of global GDP and around 65% of global emissions. We've seen very significant progress in the last 12 months, with more and more countries coming forward and committing to achieving net zero emissions. And just over the last 12 months, we've seen net zero commitments from China, Japan and South Korea, along with the incoming US administration. And Singapore and Nepal have also committed to net zero in recent months. And so the political landscape on climate change and net zero has shifted dramatically. Net zero targets are now understood to send very clear signals to market actors and to private sector investors, unlocking the capital required to reduce our emissions. Over half of the G20 now have firm targets for net zero or carbon neutrality, establishing net zero as the benchmark for all major economies. And committing to net zero is an important first step towards emissions reductions, but those sorts of long-term commitments alone are not enough. Net zero commitments without near-term action will not deliver on our Paris goals to limit the rise in global temperatures to no more than 2 degrees centigrade and as close to 1.5 degrees centigrade as possible. And indeed, net zero must not become a byword for postponing action into the 2040s. Our priority for COP26, therefore, is to turn net zero commitments into ambitious 2030 near-term emissions reduction targets through the NDC process. And these NDCs need to be backed up with robust and transparent plans for achieving NDC goals. And the same is true for corporations as well as for countries. Only by setting these clear pathways and policies to achieving ambitious targets can the public, the business and the international community have the confidence that these goals will be achieved. Clean growth represents the most significant economic opportunity of the 21st century. My own country, the UK, has shown that we can grow our economy whilst reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Between 1990 and 2019, the UK economy nearly halved its emissions whilst growing our economy by over 75%. There are almost 500,000 jobs now in the low-carbon businesses in the UK and amongst their supply chains, and this number continues to grow week on week. With the cost of renewables and batteries coming down, these trends are only set to accelerate. And just as mobile phones revolutionised global telecommunications, clean growth and renewable energy presents a similar, if not greater, economic opportunity. As Tesla and others have shown, if incumbents don't seize the opportunities presented by the low-carbon economy, their place will be taken by new entrants. In the world of telecommunications, Apple didn't make a mobile phone before 2007 and is now the world's most valuable phone maker. And similarly, Tesla produced their first saloon only in 2012, but now, 9 years later, its stock market valuation is several times that of Toyota. The cost of renewables and other low-carbon technology has fallen far quicker and far more than we anticipated, even just a few years ago. And this means that companies and countries can be more ambitious at no extra cost. Solar and onshore wind are now the cheapest source of new bulk power in all major economies, apart from Japan. And last year, over 90% of newly installed electricity generation capacity around the world was in solar or wind. And in the coming years, over $11 trillion of investment is expected to go into zero-emission power generation technology before 2050. And encouragingly, as we seek to recover our economies from COVID-19, the science shows, and the economics is clear, that $1 million invested in renewables creates many more jobs than the same sum invested in hydrocarbon and the fossil fuel economy. And the International Renewable Energy Agency reports that investment in renewables could result in 7 million more jobs across the world. By investing in renewable energy now, you can generate jobs, growth, energy and security. And in Asia, although we see the continued growth of coal capacity in China and across Southeast Asia, we see that growth in coal capacity challenged by an astonishingly fast uptake of renewables, with China now the world's largest investor in renewable energy. And given that renewables are always the lowest marginal cost producer, we can anticipate a very swift rupture in the economics of coal power generation. And we've already seen the beginnings of that in Germany with recent negative energy prices. But the long-term transition to a net zero global economy will require unprecedented changes to how we invest, measure risk, and assign value to assets. We are undoubtedly already on a journey to a low carbon economy. That's not in doubt. But we need to accelerate that journey if we are to meet our climate change goals. We need to phase out subsidies for fossil fuels, and we need to further stimulate renewables. The UK is playing our part. We were the first major industrial economy to commit to a net zero target, and our 6th carbon budget, legally binding carbon budget, commits the UK to a 78% reduction on our 1990 levels of greenhouse gas emissions by 2035, and that's a world-leading commitment. Ahead of COP26, the government will publish a comprehensive net zero strategy, setting out the government's vision for transitioning the UK to a net zero economy. We will set out our ambitious plans across key sectors of the economy about how we will meet our carbon budgets and how will we deliver on net zero. And there will be no better place to invest in the world in the low carbon economy than the UK. Externally, we've ended our international support for fossil fuels, which means that all of our network of diplomatic support, trade support, and investment support is now geared towards supporting low carbon growth. We want to work with you to make the right choices and to enable companies and countries and businesses and investors across Asia to feel the full benefit of what the transition to a net zero economy has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Merton, and thank you to the UK for your leadership in COP26. We now move to a panel to discuss collaborative action for a sustainable and resilient Asia Pacific. The panel will be moderated by Dr. Priyantha Wijayatunga, the Director of Energy Division, South Asia Department at ADB. Dr. Priyantha, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, wherever you are connecting from. Welcome to this panel discussion on collaborative action for a sustainable and resilient Asia and the Pacific. As all of us know, COP26 or Conference of Parties 26 meeting is around the corner, and its theme is uniting the world to tackle climate change. As all of us know, this is timely and critical as we pursue ambitious climate goals through updated nationally determined contributions and clear path to carbon neutrality, hopefully by the mid-century. It is now only by acting together, we would be able to achieve these ambitions. Of course, we have to recognize and act within the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. The reality is all of us have to work intensely as ever together to ensure we contain global temperature rise within 1.5 Celsius. All of us know the current NDCs, while being much better than the situation prior, are not good enough and will lead to 3-degree rise or even more. That's the estimate. Therefore, collaboration is the key and to ease the burden of transition from where we are now to a better future. Collaboration will come in many forms, as we know, among countries, within regions, among different geographical regions, developed and developing groups, public and private sectors, among development partners, the civil society, all forms of collaboration. In ADB, we have been promoting for years regional cooperation in different sub-regions. As you know, Central and West Asia region, we have a very strong program. Then we have GMS, a strong program, and also SASEC, the South Asia region. We have very strong regional cooperation programs. Similarly, we have been working very closely with our development partners in all these areas, as well as private sector and the civil society. So with this background, let us now focus a bit on what we see on in Asia Pacific region and how we can go about strengthening this collaboration with the focus on climate change, particularly in the context of addressing the issues associated with it. To discuss this topic, we have an eminent panel of experts and leaders whom we all know. And let me now introduce the panel straight away, the whole panel. We have Sujata Gupta, Director of the Sustainable Infrastructure Division, East Asia Department, ADB. She has been with ADB since 2003 and has worked in sovereign and non-sovereign operations in the bank. Then we have Shantanu Chakraborty, Director, Infrastructure Finance Division 1 of ADB. He has been with ADB for over 16 years. And his current responsibilities include managing a team of investment professionals responsible for origination and execution of infrastructure and project finance transactions in South and Central Asia. Then we have Jackie Sultani, Director, Infrastructure Division 2. He was appointed Director of the Infrastructure Finance Division that covers East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Pacific Islands somewhere in April 2017. Prior to ADB, Jackie led the risk functions of Siemens Financial Services Asia Commercial Finance Unit as their Regional Chief Risk Officer. Then we have Matthew Wittgenstein, Section Chief, Connectivity Energy Division, United Nations Economic and Social Commission, which we all know as UNESCAP for Asia and Pacific. And in his role, Matthew supports efforts by countries across the region seeking to improve the sustainability and security of energy systems through increased cross-border power system integration. Then last but not the least, Mark Radka, Deputy Director, Economic Division, United Nations Environment Program. He heads the UN Environment Program's Energy and Climate branch, where he manages the organization's efforts to link the global energy and environmental agenda. So you can see we have quite an eminent panel to discuss this very important topic of collaboration, how we can improve collaboration and see how we can achieve these ambitious targets. So I start off with, with Sujata. The question is, what are the current forms and level of collaboration what we see in your respective regions in the Asia-Pacific region as a whole, among different stakeholders, including MDBs, UN organizations, and all sorts of other forms, groups, and interested parties. What you see in terms of collaboration? Give some examples in the East Asia region, Sujata, where you really work. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanta. I would like to discuss the case of renewable energy in Mongolia. There is enormous potential for collaboration within the country and within the region. So let me start looking at within the country first. While there are vast renewable energy sources in the country, Mongolia is 93% dependent on coal-fired electricity. There are challenges to, of course, integrating renewable energy into the grid, but these are and can be addressed with technological advancements in and the lowering of costs, for example, for storage, smart grid technologies, and renewable energy technology itself. So Mongolia has a paradox. It has a lot of coal and a lot of renewable energy, and it uses only the coal. However, these investments in renewable energy have to come from the private sector, and this requires a synergetic relationship between government and private sector so that these investments can be channeled into renewable energy. This is also Jackie's area, one of Jackie's areas of operation. So what's really required is a strong and transparent regulatory framework which will nurture this collaboration. And there is strong collaboration between ADB's private sector operations and sovereign operations, as well as with other MDBs like EBRD. So collectively, we are working to enhance the capacity of the government to provide an enabling environment for private sector investments. So for example, ADB's sovereign operations support one of the largest utility scale battery energy storage system. And we are discussing a smart grid to provide a technically advanced system that is able to integrate more renewable energy. ADB's private sector is supporting investments in solar capacity, EBRD is working with the government on reverse auctions and the renewable energy power purchase agreement. Next, I want to mention an initiative that has tremendous scope for collaboration, but massive challenges. This is the Northeast Asia Power System Interconnections, or as we call it, the NAPSI project. All the Northeast Asian countries are dependent on fossil fuel, which actually provided 70% of the region's electricity generation in 2018. And expansion of renewable energy power in Northeast Asian countries is constrained by a number of factors like distance from load centers and the areas that have the best renewable energy resources, existing grid constraints or land constraints that prevent domestic renewable expansion at levels required to reach, that can meet the climate mitigation goal. So there are high quality resources located in the southern part of the country, 20 to 50 kilometers from existing substations. And this is estimated to be around 22 gigawatts of wind and almost 500 gigawatts of solar photovoltaic. Most of these resources are located in the south of the country near the Gobi Desert and close to the border with the PRC. So ADB did a study which recommended a phased development of a regional grid, starting with an initial 5 gigawatt of wind and solar development in South Gobi, and then an interconnection between South Gobi region and the PRC, and further an interconnection between PRC and Republic of Korea. So we have a follow-on technical assistance plan to refine the renewable development scenario in this region, evaluation of commercial structuring arrangements for power purchase and transboundary transmission, and promoting Mongolia as a clean power exporter. This TA, we will be coordinating with Matthew's organization, UNSCAP, which has an ongoing effort to engage regional power interconnections across all Northeast Asian countries. And this coordination ensures that we have a focused dialogue and there's no duplication, and it allows for sustained momentum on an initiative that could greatly reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the region. This is a region which accounts for 20% of the global GDP, but has 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So with this, I'll stop here and back to you, Priyanta.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sujata. Basically, you cover all possible areas, I suppose. These are excellent examples of how you can collaborate between different countries when it comes to interconnections, and then how you collaborate with other development partners, and then how you collaborate with the private sector. But with that, that's a very good start for the panel. Let me now request Shan to add more, sugar to it and sweeten it and see what your experiences are. Shan, it's over to you.
Thank you, Priyanta. Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody, wherever you are. So first of all, I have the privilege of covering a very exciting set of 16 countries in various stages in the path to a green strategy and sustainability. There are mature markets such as India and Pakistan with strong track record of renewable energy and sustainable investments. Then there are predominantly fossil fuel-based economies in Central Asia. And then there are countries with a very low domestic resource base, such as Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal, looking for options. And lastly, there are countries like Afghanistan that are fragile and conflict affected, with significant uncertainty on how it will meet its enormous energy needs. So there's scope for enormous collaboration across the spectrum. So with that theme, let me just highlight the following 3 themes on collaboration from a financier's perspective, from a private sector financier's perspective, and some successful projects that we recently did, backed up by very strong collaboration among the various stakeholders. First, I'll talk about project-specific multi-stakeholder collaboration among multilaterals, bilaterals, government agencies, civil society, and project-affected people. One prime example is the Upper Trishuli hydro project that we did in Nepal in late 2019, about 16, 17 months back. It took a painstaking 7 to 8 years of solid collaboration with a massive earthquake thrown in there during the project development phase. An environmentally sensitive project and the first of its kind, very intensive coordination was needed among the lenders. Almost all the MDBs and DFIs active in the region participated. A significant number of government agencies, a most dedicated equity sponsor, KEPCO, which persevered with the project despite diminishing equity returns more as a social initiative. Civil society, local communities, everybody chipped in. The eventual output was an extremely well-designed hydro project, the first by the private sector in Nepal in 25 years, with the very best practices in ESG, sustainability, gender equity, etc. The second collaboration I want to speak about is sector-specific collaboration between governments and MDBs. We are seeing increasingly strong alignment between governments, regulators, key market players, and the private sector in some of our smokestack economies that are in early stages of ramping up their clean energy programs, be it under ADB's own or EBRD's transaction advisory work or the World Bank's scaling solar program. Governments are receiving sound advice and taking necessary corrective steps to ensure appropriate risk allocation and a transparent price discovery and project award process. I'm particularly proud of the way ADB has internally collaborated and engaged in Uzbekistan, and that's the example I wanted to cite here as a prime one ADB collaboration, upstream, midstream, and downstream. Our sovereign operations played a stellar role in advocacy for PPP in the country. Our PPP transaction advisory team provided the best-in-class structuring support to the government, and now our private sector arm is poised to provide the financing as a downstream activity. As a consequence of this strong commitment all around towards collaboration, solar tariffs have plummeted to 1.8 cents per kilowatt hour in the recent bids. Lastly, we are also seeing significant cooperation from donors and concessional fund providers to de-risk projects. We have seen donor agencies such as USAID, as Steve mentioned earlier, significantly committing to buying down project costs in countries such as Afghanistan. Several other donor agencies are providing very useful concessional and blended finance solutions to support projects in hydro and solar. For ADB, access to concessional financing has helped us finance the very first private sector solar projects in 3 countries in my region, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and Uzbekistan, as well as a hydro in Nepal. So overall, Priyanta and everybody, a very good thrust towards collaboration, a long way to go, but I think we made very significant strides. Let me stop there, Priyanka. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's really good to see how private sector has been able to collaborate so effectively to do some of the good work in recent times. That's excellent examples, and particularly how you overcame all these issues in Nepal up through Chile and finally made it happen. Thank you very much for those examples and sharing those experiences. Now, I know in ADB we have these 5 different regions, and each region is so unique and they have unique issues. And now we have Jackie who can touch on the issues and how you really collaborate in East Asia and Southeast Asia region, and of course Pacific is a completely different and a unique situation. Let's listen to him. Jackie, it's over to you.
Thank you, Priyanta. Similar to Shana, I am responsible for 26 countries, all very different and exciting, but requires rather bespoke approaches. So let me start first by saying, in terms of collaboration, actually this is very much embedded in ADB's Strategy 2030, where we are asked for every dollar that ADB raises, we have to bring in $2.5 of other co-financing. So collaboration, there's a very strong incentive for us to work with other co-financiers. And let me share some different examples from different parts of the region that I cover. Let me first take Thailand, which is a more advanced economy. And here, Thailand has already done a lot of wind and solar projects. So what our focus in Thailand is really now on, first and foremost, on rooftop solar, where we recently worked with a Swiss company called Responsibility and a Thai commercial bank to do a very small rooftop solar deal, but again, very, very innovative and our first rooftop solar deal. Similarly, the other area of innovation that we want to adopt here in Asia is battery storage. And here we used concessional finance to combine a wind and battery storage project in Thailand. So really, we are using Thailand to sort of take some very innovative approaches in renewable energy so that we can then apply that in some of our other DMCs. Moving then on to other parts of the greater Mekong sub-region, I'm particularly proud of the work that we are currently doing in Vietnam, where ADB has already led 4 renewable energy projects, and we hope to do a further 2 more before the end of this year. I'd say that's probably, if not the leader in renewable energy projects in Vietnam, and we're covering the whole gambit. We started off with a floating solar project, which really combines a hydro reservoir with solar panels floating on a reservoir. And then we've done 2 ground-mounted solar projects. And last but not least, last month, we closed our first wind project. And what I really would like to stress on this wind project is we brought in Export Finance Australia and JICA, so 2 bilaterals, and 4 commercial banks. And again, this was Export Finance Australia's first investment in Vietnam. I think it was the first investment for all of these commercial banks as well. So very, very excited about that. Similar to what Shantanu was saying, we are also working very closely with our Office of Public-Private Partnerships, and we hope in the next few months to close our second solar project in Cambodia. Last but not least, Priyantha, as you rightfully said, the Pacific Islands is a completely different challenge. 2 years ago, we got board approval for a $100 million Pacific Renewable Energy Program. And what that was really designed for was to create a program to encourage private sector investments in this really important region for very, very small renewable energy projects. So we're looking in the next few months to close our first project under this program, which would be a 6 megawatt solar project in Tonga, and hoping again to encourage more private sector investment in these 14 Pacific Island countries. I'll stop there and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Quite exciting, and also it's quite interesting to see even being part of the private sector, you are still trying to work with these new technologies where you have a lot of risks involved, and but still it's you're trying, and that's very important, because usually you need a lot of sovereign financing for this kind of thing rather than private financing. The private financing is being brought in is quite exciting and a very encouraging sign, where you would like to get that risk addressed. So with that, thank you very much, and let's move to Matthew. And it's a completely different organization in that sense. We are financing institutions, ADB, whereas now when it comes to UN, let's see how this UN organizations can help us to improve this collaboration and bring in their capacity and their support to see how we can improve from where we are. Matthew, it's over to you.
Thank you, Priyantha. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to participate in this really excellent closing panel session for ASEF this year. At ESCAP, within Energy Division, of course, we're supporting our member states across a range of energy issues, in particular revolving around SDG 7 and implementation there, such as access, clean cooking, access to modern renewables or energy sources, and also renewable energy. But I focus my work on energy connectivity, so allow me to dig in a little bit deeper about the work that's going on under ESCAP on energy connectivity. Building off some of the things that Sujata mentioned, SCAP, we see energy connectivity, especially power sector connectivity, as a critical tool that can enable increased development and integration of renewable energy and other low carbon energy resources. This topic, I noted, came up quite often during the week, which I was pleased to see. A number of speakers in various sessions talked about connectivity, talked about collaboration on energy as a key tool for reaching our joint sustainable development and Paris Agreement goals. The Mongolia example is a great one and one that I often reference. Mongolia has tremendous resources, but far more resources than it could ever utilize domestically alone, given local demand. So there's an opportunity for it to support economic development by becoming an exporter of low carbon resources. But all across the region, you can find similar examples where either there's an opportunity to further development by interconnecting with neighbors, or by increasing power system diversity or sustainability by tapping into resources across borders, like here in Thailand, importing power from Laos and hydro, or even Singapore looking to import solar power from Australia. So collaboration is, to me, at the heart of all of these connectivity efforts. They all require countries to work together to meet these goals and do it in a way that both meets domestic needs, but also serves the broader goal of sustainability. And as we're already highlighted both in this session and earlier in the week, there are many initiatives across Asia going on energy connectivity. The GMS ADB leads GMS initiatives on power system connectivity. You also have the ASEAN power grid efforts. In South Asia, you have USAID-led initiative SAR-EI. You have CASA 1000 in Central Asia. And Northeast Asia, as was already discussed, and I'll touch on it again in a second, but generally speaking, despite all of these initiatives, Asia still lags behind other regions in terms of power system connectivity, either in terms of the level of connectivity or the absence of regional markets like we see in North America, Europe, or Africa. So SCAP really sees a need for more collaboration on this topic, and our member states agree. And the way I could say this is because in April at our commission session, our member states endorsed a regional roadmap on power system connectivity in Asia. And this roadmap, which is available on our website, has 9 strategies covering a range of areas such as planning, financing and developing cross-border infrastructure, operating cross-border infrastructure, and cross-cutting issues like political will or alignment with sustainable development goals, which if implemented could increase sustainable connectivity across the region. To me, the key issue or the key factor here is this is not a text that SCAP has given to our member states. This is a text, a roadmap that our member states have given to us. They negotiated the text. They went through it line by line and said, this is what we want to have in this document. And the document, despite the various interests and diverging opinions among our member states, is still really ambitious and really sets a great forward momentum to this topic and really gives SCAP a great way forward to support this work. So let me just end by talking about just a couple of initiatives or work programs that we're doing to support this. Sujata already mentioned our work in Northeast Asia in collaboration with ADB. This to me is a fantastic example of how we can leverage the various strengths of all the institutions in the region. ADB brings not only financing, but deep technical knowledge and real deep expertise in terms of what physical connectivity means in practice. Whereas we can bring a lot of the stakeholders to the table who normally wouldn't be invited to these meetings and build political support and social support for what we think are really important initiatives, and also provide our own analysis and our own assessments of why we think these things are valuable, which is what we're doing now in Northeast Asia through what we're calling the development of a green power corridor roadmap, which builds off of work like NAPSI and others to show how you can actually meet these goals by setting ambitious targets, but also doing this work over time. More broadly across the region, we are, and I should say also that really does build off of NAPSI. Like we're starting with NAPSI as a starting point. So it's really about being additive, not duplicative. We're also doing work on some of the institutional capacity needs. We're doing right now some trainings for regulators on connectivity, what their role is and how they can better support energy connectivity initiatives. We've just done some trainings here in ASEAN. We're planning some more trainings in the region focused on utilities, and we'll do some trainings in South Asia as well for regulators there. And we're also beginning to branch out. We just spoke, the previous speaker spoke about the Pacific Islands and their particular needs. Well, we have many member states who are Pacific Islands. islands, and they often ask the question, what does energy connectivity mean for us? Well, it's probably not going to mean big grids, but nevertheless, islands still rely on significant imports of diesel fuels or renewable energy technologies, or have to build mini grid systems to increase resilience. How do we use connectivity as a tool to support Pacific Island nations as well? We have a project we're working on right now, which will result in a workshop at the end of the year, where we're going to explore that issue in more detail and hopefully build up the future work down the road. So the last thing I'll say is really SCAP, we can't do this work alone. So collaboration is critical, not only for the countries in our region, but also for organizations like SCAP. So it's a great privilege to me to be able to speak to this audience and participate in a panel like this to just really demonstrate how by working together, we're able to go a lot further than we could alone. Thanks, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matthew. And quite a good elaboration of what connectivity means when it comes to collaboration, and also when it comes to addressing some of these critical challenges we face in terms of providing energy access and also addressing climate change challenges. And thank you very much. That's excellent. And as you know, ADB has been doing quite a lot, along with, as Sujata quite rightly said, with other development partners for many years. And let's now listen to Mark, his perspective of collaboration and where we should be going in terms of collaboration. Thank you. Mark, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, and a very good morning to everyone from Paris. So a few general reflections on forms of cooperation, and I'm going to give two examples from the Asia Pacific region. What I'm going to say, I think, builds very nicely on Matthew's points. So in our experience, the best cooperation brings together partners that have complementary skills and importantly, credibility, meaning the power to persuade people to take a different course of action. As came out very clearly this week, the energy transition that we need to deal with climate change and meet growing demands for energy is going to require new technologies, business models, regulatory approaches. So a lot of uncertainty and hence perceived risk in the part of people who have to make decisions about a new future. What we really need to do is very quickly get over the tendency of the folks who make decisions to stick with the status quo, move slowly, let someone else go first, let others experiment in a sense. We've rewarded people in the energy sector for being pretty conservative for the last 100 years. And what we're asking of them now is to make very big changes, and that doesn't come easily. UNEP is a environmental organization. I work on energy issues, so to be honest, I'm often viewed with some suspicion in the energy world. The only way that we can be effective is to cooperate with others. So we bring together very broad coalitions, industry, NGOs of various sorts, research and development organizations, testing laboratories, governments that have been down a certain policy path, and importantly, financial institutions. Pull them all together, and out of that, we can achieve what some have called collective impact. Much greater credibility as a group, because you can't be attacked by, let's say, the opponents for pushing one particular agenda. So a specific example, the International Energy Agency says that roughly 40% of the emissions reductions that are required in the energy sector from now through 2030 can come from gains of energy efficiency using existing technologies. So this is really important from a climate perspective. If you look to Asia, huge projected growth in demand for things like air conditioners and refrigerators, mainly driven by expansion of economies and growing purchasing power and the ability of millions and millions of people to acquire consumer goods. Appliance efficiency in Asia is generally very low compared to that in the EU or the United States. So our response has been a multi-year effort with a goal to bring about higher minimum energy performance standards. So a regulatory approach in all of the ASEAN countries as a group. So a harmonized approach that would create a larger regional market for efficient appliances, motors, lighting, and so on. So how do we do this? We bring together a very rich, broad group of manufacturers who can speak to the technical possibilities, governments, testing labs, as I said, consumer advocacy groups who would like to see a move, climate advocates, and financial institutions. None of us would be effective working alone. And what we've been able to do is basically push minimum energy performance standards. It's the opposite end of the scale from what Matthew was talking about. This is not grid integration. This is refrigerators in millions and millions of homes. Or even scarier from a climate perspective is split system air conditioners. We're starting something similar in coal. There's an immediate and pressing need, as we all know, to avoid a lock-in of additional coal infrastructure. 95% of new coal capacity globally is planned for Asia. If this new build takes off, it's going to be completely impossible to stay on any kind of trajectory consistent with the Paris Agreement. So it's early days, but I hope that cooperation among governments, utilities, banks, EPC companies, new technology suppliers can kind of bring about that coalition, a complementary coalition where everybody speaks with some authority to a different part of the overall, let's say, new agenda, and therefore we can break out of, let's say, the slow pace of incremental change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That's a complete another different perspective, particularly emphasizing on things like energy efficiency, and also the overall impact collectively we can make when it comes to addressing these challenges. Thank you, Mark. Let me now quickly go back to another question, starting from Sujata. Can you basically elaborate on specific challenges, what you would face when it comes to this energy transition? Particularly in East Asia, it's quite challenging because the systems are quite dominated with coal and other fossil fuels. So, what if you can pick up few specific challenges and how we can use collaboration to overcome these challenges? Sujata, it's over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Priyanta. For me, one very important area is, access to cutting-edge technology for developing countries. So, right now, when we are looking at the climate change scenario and mitigation, there is a sense of urgency. We are running out of time. And as you had mentioned, when commenting on Jackie's examples, there is a sort of de-risking required of these evolving technologies. And, the current scenario makes me draw a parallel to, the COVID-19 vaccine, where emergency measures are required to make sure that this vaccine is accessible and available to everyone. And hence, we have to do a similar exercise for access to technologies like hydrogen, or more specifically green hydrogen, CCUS, as it evolves and develops. And to my mind, that's a very important area where we need to collaborate on. And the COVID-19 vaccine has shown that it's possible. Then the second area and related area is that many DMCs are apprehensive that clean energy will compromise on their growth trajectory, and this is something that they cannot afford to do so. I mean, you may have heard some of this in the context of our energy policy discussions also. So to my mind, what is required is a detailed analysis and demonstration of the impact accelerated penetration of clean energy will have on economic growth. So as we build back from COVID, we target green, inclusive, resilient recovery, as it's called, we need to demonstrate practical examples. And these examples have to be at scale. They cannot be small pilots. And there has to be a detailed, in-depth analysis to show the DMC that this will lead to sustainable high quality growth and make resources available for peers. So maybe I will just stop with these two, to my mind, very important areas that we need to target. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sujata. That's quite interesting, actually. The access to technology may not be that easy at the moment, and also de-risking these technologies. And that's where, obviously, if you really need private sector investments to come in, you really need to go into that. And as you said, a good example is COVID vaccine program. And yeah, thank you very much for those thoughts. Now, with the same question, can I move to Sean and your thoughts on the challenges that in your region and how we can, overcome them through collaboration? Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Priyanta. So as I mentioned earlier, my region is very disparate. So collaboration needs are also very different as a consequence. At a granular level, I can think of the following kind of areas in some of my key markets. So that need specific attention and collaboration. So take India, for instance, with the renewable sector in a fairly advanced stage, the focus of collaboration among MDBs and financiers now needs to shift towards addressing the weaker links in the chain, such as the distribution sector, which we know is still very weak. So that's in need of reforms to ensure efficient utilization of resources and to price energy appropriately to reduce wastage. We also need to reduce the transmission bottlenecks to ensure efficient flow of renewable energy from the generation centers to the load centers. There's some very bespoke challenges that Priyanta, you and I have discussed in the past. For instance, the one that we're facing in India with the critical habitat for an endangered bird species that is overlapping with the most promising solar-rich areas in the country. So issues such as these, fairly macro and capital-intensive issues, are really beyond the remit of the private sector and do need a collaborative approach between the government and potentially the sovereign arms of the multilaterals. In the context of India, we also need to support, as Sujata mentioned, with appropriate de-risking, adoption of new technologies with appropriate incentives, hybrid plants, energy storage, smart grid. These things have picked up in India, but it's not been at a pace that has been commensurate with some of the kind of progresses in some of the other areas. The other burning topic where there's a need for a lot of discussion and collaboration is energy transition mechanism. There's a lot of discussions going on in many of our in many of our member countries, and India also could potentially go down that path and think about supporting the early retirements of some of the least efficient coal plants and accelerate mainstreaming of RE as a baseload power. Then in South Asia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Again, there is, RE projects have not yet been mainstreamed in either Bangladesh or in Sri Lanka. So it's more of an execution issue there. And similarly, similar to in India, the distribution sector and the transmission sectors remain very, very weak links. And they will sooner or later turn out to be major impediments when the countries really embark upon a more serious path towards mainstreaming RE. So those are some of the bottlenecks that I can think of. In the Maldives, it's a very small economy, island country, but we really haven't done enough to support the adoption of renewable energy by way of distributed generation at the resort levels. There have been various attempts by various players, but really, a commercially sustainable model has not yet emerged in Maldives. Now, coming to Central Asia, it's more of execution. We've got some countries such as Azerbaijan, which have really embarked upon very aggressive renewable energy program, and they need to really show some landmark transactions, kind of reaching the final stages and start construction of some pioneering projects. So ADB is currently actively involved in a few of these, both in the wind and solar sector. I think again the private sector arms of the MDBs need to really step up because these countries have issues such as grid parity of renewables with fossil fuel and so on and so forth. So we really need to be able to kind of stretch the envelope as much as we can to be able to support those projects. Then we've got other sector specific issues in some of my countries, and the name that comes to my mind is of course Pakistan. There's a very urgent need to intensify collaboration between the government, IPPs and the multilateral development banks and the lenders, and develop further clarity in the direction of the renewable energy sector in the backdrop of the ongoing PPA renegotiations, the extent of overcapacity of fossil fuel in the sector, and the government's overall intentions to eventually put more kind of thrust on RE competitive bidding. Some other countries in Central Asia, and that I think was touched upon by Sujata earlier. Really, the private sector is not really conducive to attracting I mean, the regime is not really conducive to attracting private sector, and I mean, without kind of dollops of upfront buy-in of capital cost or subsidies. And I refer to countries like Afghanistan, the Kyrgyz Republic, and Tajikistan. There is really an urgent need to accelerate the sector reforms, develop best practice PPP frameworks, attract the private sector, engage with the MDBs to really continue to play a major role in project advisory and identification and structuring through the various PPP advisory activities where we've been successful in some of the neighboring countries. So, and then there are some other countries like Armenia, Georgia, Kazakhstan. They've made good strides in adopting RE. So now the matter is more of execution of the projects that have been well bid out, well structured, and how to really attract the equity and debt to really reach the finishing line, especially given the disruptions caused by COVID. So I'll stop there, Priyanta. So those are some thoughts on some of my countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shan. That's a lot on the plate, and we really need to add from this. One thing what I can see is that we have a lot to collaborate even within institutions, like because some of the challenges which you just talked about from sovereign side, we have to address. We have to intervene in sector reforms and improving the investment environment through regulatory, proper regulatory environments and so on. So in a way, it's collaboration within the institutions too, and also between different NDBs to make sure that you bring the right kind of investment environment. Now, with that, can I request Jackie to quickly go through his thoughts also, please, Jackie?
Yeah. Thank you, Priyanta. So I don't want to overlap with what Sujata and Sean touched on. I mean, I completely agree with them on new technologies, safeguards, execution risks. So let me touch on something slightly different. And what I want to touch on is a phrase called risk appetite. And I want to use Vietnam as an example. As I mentioned, we've done quite a bit in renewable energy in Vietnam. But if you go to practically every conference on infrastructure financing and you talk about Vietnam, the first thing that you'll hear is that the PPA in Vietnam is unbankable. And again, this is where collaboration is greatly needed. Is to say, okay, it's unbankable. Well, how are we going to make it bankable? And this is what I really pride about ADB and our private sector operations is we take a problem and then come up with a solution. And this is exactly what we strove to do in Vietnam, is to find appropriate risk mitigants to plug the holes in the PPA in Vietnam. And like I said, we financed 4 renewable projects. Where I think collaboration is key is then for those structures to be welcomed by the market. And again, like I said, I really am thrilled that we had the Export Finance of Australia, JICA, and 4 commercial banks in our most recent deal. And this is what we really want to encourage collaboration on, is to bring in other co-financing parties on structures where we think you need to think a little bit out of the box. We cannot always sort of look at, shall I say, textbook or Western style power purchase agreements and say, this is the perfect model. So that has to be applied in every single Asian country. We have to adapt for local situations and understand that. I mean, just in closing, the sponsor that we worked with was a combination on the wind project, was a Vietnamese sponsor that practically nobody had ever heard of, but was very, very entrenched in Vietnam, had worked with the World Bank on transmission, coupled with a Japanese sponsor who was doing its first investment in Vietnam. So this is really where I think collaboration is really needed, is to really think out of the box and come up with more local solutions. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie. Can I quickly now move to Matthew to give his perception on how UN agencies can kind of bring in this angle, how to improve collaboration and to address these challenges. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great question. And I'll try not to repeat what's already been said. Actually, there's lots of great thoughts already. But in terms of what the UN is trying to do, our organization at ESCAP, we're relatively small. We're not working on the ground like other organizations are. My team is quite tiny. So we can't do it all alone. So what are we doing? Well, I think really you could break it down to three main areas. One, we're advocating for policies and plans that we believe in. So I mentioned energy connectivity. We're advocating on behalf of it because we do believe it's a tool that really can be useful. But we don't stop there. Of course, we're also talking about coal phase-out policies. We're talking about how to reach SDG 7 goals and targets. So it's about advocating to get our member states and really all the stakeholders we need to have on board together to agree, yes, we should try to do these things. These are goals we want to achieve. These are directions we need to move in. The second is to convene and to some extent coordinate, but really about bringing everyone to the table. ESCAP, one privilege we have is a really diverse and inclusive membership. All the countries in Asia and the Pacific come to the table at ESCAP's headquarters and talk about issues that are relevant. And so I think we can, through our platform, bring together all the relevant stakeholders to have them really have in-depth and useful discussions to build off of all the technical work that's being done by your organizations and others. But also, honestly, to take advantage, to resolve a challenge that I've heard throughout this week, which is that there's so many initiatives, there's so many activities, so many conversations. How do we bring them all together? Well, I think ESCAP and UN more generally really can act as a platform to try to bring these conversations together, to harmonize them, avoid duplication, build off each other, et cetera. And the last is through supporting these initiatives through our own analytical work. We are doing analysis of these topics. We're doing roadmaps on SDG 7 implementation for countries in the region. We just launched one for Tonga recently. We've done it for Georgia and Indonesia, et cetera. These are really practical ways of achieving these goals. We're not the ones who are going to implement these roadmaps. It's the member states who need to do it, right? So there we can provide a pathway, but we can't do the work beyond that to a great extent. We need ADB. We need other development banks. We need other partners to come in, take the work that we're doing and run with it. But we want to be through the process, supporting it along the way, being a part of the conversation and showing where things can be improved when they need to be improved and showing where things are going great when they should be going. We should be highlighted as such. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Let me quickly go to Mark. If you want to add anything to this, what Matthew was saying about how UN can play a major role in these collaborative efforts. Yeah.
Well, as he said, one thing the UN does well is bring governments together. And of course, over the years, there's been a move to allow civil society, the private sector, financial institutions, and so on into the room. So often we use the exact phrase that Matthew mentioned, the convening power. If we organize a meeting, people tend to come. And many of you are aware that Secretary General Guterres is pushing the system toward the concept of one UN, so greater system coordination and coherence in a sense. In the Asia Pacific region, all the UN agencies have come together on an issue-based coalition around the topic of air pollution and climate change. And this effort brings together everyone working in the region on issues ranging from NDC strengthening to the coal phase out, air pollution reduction, carbon pricing issues to work together, pool expertise and coordinate activities. So same message, strengthen numbers, strengthen combining issues that often have a common solution. Air pollution and GHG emissions reductions are kind of two sides of the same coin. When we go together with that double message, it's often much more persuasive. I know we're running out of time, so over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, we have just 2 minutes to go, probably before Vice President Ashok Lavasa comes in for the closing remarks. I don't think we have a lot of time for questions, but I'll give you 30 seconds to each of you, or 15 seconds quickly to run through any parting thoughts, starting from Sujata.
So as I said, the theme of this discussion, collaboration, is the most important.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. Sean?
Just one point, I think, just to echo what you said in your initial comments, Priyanta, or in the spirit of collaboration, a lot of potential in the area of regional cooperation to address the sustainability agenda in our DMCs. Thanks.
Jackie?
Yeah, I think collaboration is key, but we need to turn a lot of this into action. We have a lot of work to do.
Matthew? Mark?
Yeah, I think to me, the key is how do we take these conversations and turn them into actual action on the ground?
So big changes needed. It's a big year for energy. Our institutions have to lead. We're much stronger together. Collaboration.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the eminent panel. And this concludes the panel discussion. And let me hand this back to Steve to take it from there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Priyantha. To close ASEF 2021, we have closing remarks by Ashok Lavasa, the Vice President for Private Sector Operations and Private-Public Partnerships at ADB. Vice President Ashok Lavasa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to offer my remarks in the closing plenary of the 16th Asia Clean Energy Forum. Congratulations to all of you in making ASEF 2021 a successful and impactful week as we sharpen our collective efforts for Asia's low carbon future and green recovery. 28 sessions covering a wide range of topics and high level of participation by over 3,000 global participants shows the energy and commitment of the growing ASEF community. Let me also compliment all the speakers for bringing out excellent examples of innovative efforts to promote clean energy and sharing their deep insights into what is desirable, what is workable, and how we can work together. A key focus of the discussions on technology roadmaps that would help our member countries achieve their emission targets under their nationally determined contributions. We also tackled integrated solutions to help member countries take a green path in their COVID economic recovery efforts. Moreover, the forum has given us an opportunity to hold further consultations as part of the ongoing review of ADB's energy policy. ASEF 2021 has also given us a chance to look into the sub-regions that provide useful lessons for the rest of Asia and the Pacific. Our colleagues from East Asia led the discussions on the efforts to achieve carbon emission peaking and carbon neutrality. We got to see how digitalization is making it possible for countries in South Asia to transform their utilities to smart grids, how managing reserve capacities through efficient systems and trading in Central Asia can support large-scale renewable energy generation, and how the fragile Pacific countries can aim for resilience through transformative approaches. We explored development assistance, which is available to our developing member countries in Southeast Asia, and new thematic financing in clean energy sector through our private sector operations. We've also been able to share experiences and lessons learned regarding innovative technologies and business models, de-risking approaches, financing programs, policies and regulations, regional cooperation, and multi-sector and public-private partnerships. In short, we have a better, updated view of how big and challenging is the task that we now face. And we've come to a firmer realization that to speed up the transition of Asia and the Pacific to a low carbon future, countries in the region must achieve an unprecedented level of collaboration and cooperation. The bigger the challenge, the closer is the collaboration that is required. Indeed, we must collaborate and cooperate because clean energy development in Asia and the Pacific is critical in attaining the goals of several vital global agreements. I'm referring first to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, specifically SDG 7, which calls for ensuring universal access to energy services, increasing the share of renewable energy and doubling the rate of energy efficiency, and SDG 13, which calls for taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Clean energy development is also vital to the success of the Paris Agreement. More so today, as COP26 steps up its efforts to unite the entire world in taking more aggressive actions to cut carbon emissions and strive to achieve carbon neutrality. Clean energy also plays a big role in the region's pursuit of inclusive, resilient, and sustainable development for its people, especially the vulnerable. Clean energy will contribute to each of the 7 operational priorities that are mapped out in ADB's Strategy 2030. For example, to address remaining poverty and reduce inequalities, clean energy can help in meeting basic needs such as lighting and cooking, providing productive uses of energy to generate income, and creating jobs and developing skills, which can also accelerate gender equality. To make cities more livable, ADB seeks to support the development of energy efficient buildings, electric vehicles, and rooftop solar for households and commercial buildings. To promote rural development and food security, ADB is supporting the use of solar-powered pumps for smart irrigation. The scale and complexity of achieving the development and climate goals mean that everybody has to do his share in a massive collaborative effort. National and local governments, private businesses, large and small, the academia, non-governmental, and community organizations. It is particularly important to engage and enlist the support of the private sector, because the private sector must embrace clean energy to make their businesses and their countries' economies sustainable. And also because the private sector can contribute considerable resources to make the shift to clean energy possible. As we have seen in our discussions in ASIP 2021, ADB is exerting every possible effort to promote collaboration for the clean energy transition within and outside its organization. ADB has instituted a One ADB approach, which was brought out by all the speakers today. And that One ADB approach seeks to bring together knowledge and expertise across the organization to effectively implement Strategy 2030. ADB is promoting cross-sectoral efforts for integral solutions, is expanding private sector operations, and is supporting public-private partnerships. ADB has partnerships for knowledge sharing with various organizations. Among its many partners are the Sustainable Energy for All, the International Energy Agency, and the International Renewable Energy Agency. For clean energy financing, ADB has the Clean Energy Financing Partnership Facility, which comprises bilateral and multilateral trust funds. The Clean Energy Fund, the Asian Clean Energy Fund, the Canadian Climate Fund for the private sector in Asia, and the Carbon Capture and Storage Fund. Blended financing can leverage limited public and philanthropic funds by unlocking private capital to bridge the financing gap for a green recovery. ADB is also encouraging regional and interregional cooperation for energy. Sub-regional power trade can help meet energy demand while maximizing scarce natural resources, something that we discussed today. Regional and sub-regional networks can play a pivotal role in promoting effective energy collaboration among countries in Asia and the Pacific. Looking further afield, ADB has been collaborating with international financing institutions and multilateral development banks in supporting clean energy development in the region, including, but not limited to, policymaking to create an enabling business environment, piloting of emerging technologies, improving project readiness, and structuring of innovative financing programs. To make these collaborative efforts succeed, we must, as President Massa said in his welcome remarks, build communities of collaboration in the countries of Asia and the Pacific. I'm talking about networks of national and local officials, private entrepreneurs, scientific and technical experts, climate and sustainability advocates, and community leaders. People who can orchestrate the work needed to accelerate the energy transition of Asia and the Pacific while continuing to work for sustainable development in the region. And to fight climate change, to encourage conservation and a lifestyle that reflects our respect for natural resources. All of you who participated in the forum make up the core of these communities of collaboration. I thank you and our co-organizers, donors, and partners for contributing towards a successful and productive ASEF 2021. ADB is committed to leading the region out of the pandemic and building back smarter and more sustainably. We look forward to greater regional collaboration as we advance towards carbon neutrality by mid-21st century. We can achieve net zero only by working together. As Ernest Hemingway said even before the climate change crisis hit us, and I quote, "The earth is a fine place and worth fighting for." I'm sure that the communities of collaboration will continue this fight in the future. But let me say that the future is here and the time for action is now. On that hopeful note of collective resolve, I formally declare that Asia Clean Energy Forum 2021 has concluded. I thank you and wish you all a pleasant day and a bright and healthy future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Ashok Lavasa. Very kind of you to say those kind words. I'd like to thank all the participants and all of the presenters for this year's ASEF. And we look forward to seeing you at the next ASEF. Please stay safe and thank you.